What stood out to you?
A number of aspects, and I'll start with Anita Anand's part of her apology, the Minister of Defense, because she talked a lot about the abuse of power that took place, and in all three parts of the apology talked about they didn't just apologize that these things happened in the first place, but so much of what the apology is about is how badly the military acted when people would come forward, or that people felt they couldn't come forward because they saw what happened to those who came forward in terms of reprisals or being ignored or being told to be quiet. So much of it was this betrayal of trust and this abuse of power. And just looking at some of my notes from what Anita Anand said, that she said, these people signed up to protect and serve the country, and then the very institution that was there to protect them failed. And she said, successive governments have not done enough to stamp out this scourge. And, as you mentioned, she pledged that, of course, it will change. And so many survivors have told CBC that this apology was welcome and necessary and long overdue. But of course, seeing actual change in action is what people are looking for. General Wayne Eyre, the Chief of Defense Staff, also saying that recognizing that people lived in fear of reprisals, that people who signed up to serve our country knew the risks. Those risks including, dying for the service of country, but those risks should not have included harm from other people in uniform, that they're supposed to be a team and trust each other. So that stood out to me as well. And he also talked about whether, really where the moral authority to give this apology comes from, when these are our leaders, who some of which have been around a long time during this. And while they didn't maybe stand by while it was happening, it happened, as General Wayne Eyre says, on his watch. And there at the end there from the Deputy Minister, talking about her own experience as a woman in the military, just in terms of this idea that if you make a fuss, especially as a woman, you'll be seen as weak, and the extra challenge for women in the military to have a seat at the table and be taken seriously. So many things about the apology stood out to me. I am not a member of the military. I have not served my country in that way. I will be very interested to hear how survivors, the people this was addressed to, and so often the word "you" being used in these apologies, how they will respond, and whether this will be the apology they were looking for.
All right. Thank you for this, Karina. That is the CBC's Karina Rowan in Ottawa. Now, Annalise Shaman was watching this apology. She's a retired captain and logistics officer and was a victim of sexual assault. Annalise, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, thanks, Arti.
Okay, so you were watching that entire apology. Was it what you wanted to hear?
There was a lot in there that really resonated with me. Probably the thing that touched me the most was the reason that I got out of the military in the first place was I had the sense that nobody had my back. And, things could happen to me and there wouldn't be any justice for it. I just didn't feel safe. And the fact that that was specifically addressed really, really touched me.
And we also heard essentially that it was a very wide-spanning sort of apology here, not just to the individuals who endured this harmful behavior, sexual misconduct, sexual assault, but also to family members and those who also had to witness these victims or survivors as they endured all of this. And I know that your partner has spoken out about this too, and felt that he felt even more betrayed in this sense than any other. So do you feel like the addressing of betrayal went far enough for you here?
I really appreciated that it acknowledged the impact on friends and family. It was disruptive to our entire life and really my ability to maintain healthy relationships. So that really resonated with me.
In terms of offering this apology, it is a historic apology that was delivered today. How important do you think it is for yourself and for the thousands of others who experience this?
I think what's the most important thing for myself and a lot of other people who lived through this experience is to know that other people are going to be safer. And the focus on inclusion as a core issue here, really, like, we're not just talking about sexual assault. We're talking about the culture itself and having an inclusive culture where everyone belongs, which to me goes to the root of the issue.
And, touching on that, because it was talking about not just the fact that these individuals have had to go through this, but also the fear of reprisals as you try to report it. Being silenced, I believe, was the word that we heard from the Chief of Defence Staff, that the apology extends to those people who feel that they could not say anything. Do you think that there is sort of a degree or intensity that escalates over time depending on what you experienced?
Absolutely. Like in terms of reprisals, retaliation, victim blaming, just being told that your experience is invalid and there's no place for your voice in sharing this. That to me it's almost the worst part of the harm, because it goes on and on and on. Like you can heal with support after a traumatic experience, but without that support and without even being validated, that is just like constant re-traumatizing.
Was there anything that you were listening for, hoping for, that you did not hear?
The one thing that sort of stood out to me was that I heard a lot about systems, processes, and governance, and I think those things are important. This is a cultural issue, and structural changes can support cultural change, but I think when we talk about culture, we need to talk about like the language that we use every day, not just the processes, not just the systems and those structural changes, but the language and how we live out our culture and our values and how we do inclusion, on an individual, personal level.
Part of what we also heard from the Chief of Defence Staff was essentially that they are, of course, going forward with actions that will have to be taken and initiatives. And he said that we will go forward with humility, respect, and compassion. There will be mistakes, so new initiatives will miss the mark, and they need to learn from that. What do you think some of the most immediate action should be?
Wow. I think that this all basically starts with leadership and with personal work at the leadership level. So introspection, and I heard a lot of that from the Chief of Defence Staff. I know, I really felt that he has heard me and other people who have been victimized by the culture. I really feel like that is where the deep culture change happens. Where it starts is that introspective, really, really hard personal work on behalf of our most senior leaders.
How hopeful are you that this is a turning point?
I am hopeful. I believe the leaders that spoke today. I think that they're genuine and they are going to do everything they can to change this once and for all. And like General Ayer said, there's going to be mistakes, but he's promised to be transparent about those and learn from them. And that's really all we can ask from our leaders.
Well, we very much appreciate you taking your time out to share your experience and your thoughts on this with us today. Thank you.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Thank you.
That is retired Captain Annalise Shamoun joining us from Comox, British Columbia.